And chances are you do. You probably don't put much thought into cybersecurity. You know, your network connections, the pages you visit, the files you download. You should be thinking about these all the time. Welcome to And Security for All. Your host is Kim Hakim. We're here to help you understand, in general terms, how and why your cybersecurity should be kept in check. Now, here is Kim Hakim.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Kim Hakim, your host. Welcome to another episode of And Security for All. As most of you know, I'm also the CEO of FutureCon Events. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for another week of And Security for All. We have two types of listeners today. We have all of our guests from Voice America that listen to us on a weekly basis. Thank you for joining us today. And then we have our LinkedIn Live listeners that are joining us. So thanks everyone for being here for another great show. We just came off of our St. Louis Cybersecurity Conference, which was Wednesday, and that is actually our home base. And I am proud to say that that event was it was so packed. It was back to what things used to look like before COVID. And I keep saying that all year in 2023. So they just keep getting better and better, our events. People are itching to come out and see people. We had so many people that we had to beg the chef at the hotel to make more meals and more food because we had more people than we anticipated. It was really great. We had a couple of CISOs that did our keynote speaker. We had Mark Ashworth, who's the CISO from First Bank, and then we had Andrew Hildebrand, who is a CISO and an adjunct professor at WashU, and they definitely packed the house. So we have a couple of weeks that we're on a little bit of a break, which has been nice because we have been back to back doing events all over the country. But in the month of July, we are heading out to Orange County. Super excited for that. And then right after that, we go to Tampa. So if any of you all are listening and you would like to join our events, just ping me on LinkedIn, or if you have my email, message me or email me, and I will make sure I get you tickets. All of our events run in a virtual. They're a hybrid. So they do run virtually along with the live. So anyone can join us at any given time. Today, I actually have one of our guests, another great guest, Shamim Naqvi. He is the CEO of SafeLiShare. And today I'm excited about having him on the show. We're going to talk about AI model and data governance in the cloud. He's an experienced CEO and a co-founder with a passion for advancing the field of artificial intelligence and machine learning, ensuring its ethical and responsible use. He's proud to lead SafeLiShare as an innovative AI governance platform, leveraging the power of confidential computing. That was a little bit of a tongue twist, but Shamim, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kim. Nice to be here.
How are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Awesome. And we were talking pre-show. I saw you out in DC and then in Philadelphia. So do you guys typically try to stay around, or do you typically work with more government users, or?
No, we don't have any government involvement at all. It just so
okay.
Our marketing people thought that the FutureCon events would be a very nice place to meet and greet customers, etc. So we showed up at FutureCon Washington, D.C., which is it was my first time at a FutureCon event, and it was very pleasant. It was very nice, and thank you for your gracious hospitality. And we then came to Philadelphia and met you a second time as well. So it was great.
Yeah, and we have you guys signed up for a few more shows, so we're excited to have you back.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about you and your background and how you got started in the industry and how you got all the way up to being the CEO of SafeLiShare.
Well, I was born in Pakistan, but I went to school in the UK, early boarding school as well as college, and then I came to the US to go to graduate school at Northwestern, which is in the north of Chicago. finished up and had the great fortune of being of getting a job offer from Bell Labs in Murray Hill, New Jersey. So ended up in the Bell system, which was a part of the AT&T network at that time, and was in the Unix research lab for a number of years and worked with some extremely well-known people. Learned my trade from there. Spent a number of years in the Bell system. Was very fortunate to work with these very, very talented, experienced, well-known people, and learned a lot from there. I then sort of ended up getting into the startup community as well. So did a startup in the Boston, Massachusetts area, and then that was followed by 2 other startups. Now I'm in SafeLiShare, which is my 4th startup. This one is not in the Boston, Massachusetts area. It's in the outskirts of New York City. And here we are today. So that's a very brief sort of rundown of how I came to be at SafeLiShare.
Well, I would love to hear about your first 3 startups. So did you start those up, and how did they evolve into being bought out by someone else, or what were your first 3 startups?
Well, the first one was called Winforia Networks, and we started it in Tewksbury, Massachusetts. I had a co-founder as well in there. We were both ex-Bell Labs engineers. We had an idea. We were fortunate to speak to some VCs on the East Coast, as well as a West Coast VC firm. We got funded to build what is now known as the Motorola push-to-talk solution in those days. This was in the early 2000s. And after 3 years, we sold the company to Motorola, and the push-to-talk solution used to be
Well, congratulations. Yeah, congratulations on company number 1. So now tell us about company number 2.
Yeah, company number 2 was a financial modeling company, which came up with the idea of algorithmic trading, a certain type of algorithmic trading models, and it used certain AI and database and data governance techniques, etc. And we sold that to a hedge fund in Chicago called Morningstar, and that was a nice outcome as well.
Wow. Well, okay. Congratulations on number 2. And so now number 3. I don't know why you're not retired, but go ahead. Number 3 now.
Well, I am retired, except that I do this as a part of my retirement now.
Most entrepreneurs, it's a little tough.
Yeah, I'm not a beach type of guy. I don't take breaks, etc. I'm just passionate about my work. I like to work. I live for the work, I suppose, in some sense. I am often accused of not making a distinction between work and pleasure, because I think my work is extremely pleasurable to me.
Well, that's amazing. So now you sell company number 2. So how long did you take off between like these different companies? Did you take any time off, or did you just dive right back in?
No, not a significant amount of time. I don't remember exactly how many months, etc., but it wasn't years or something. The gap between the 3rd and 4th was a couple of years for family reasons. I had moved out of the New Jersey area as I mentioned, into Boston, Massachusetts, and so I moved back and resettled and took care of some family things and matters, etc., with kids and school and college and things like this. But generally speaking, I didn't take a significant amount of time out between the first 3 companies, which I did.
And so then what was your third, what was your third?
The third one was a video communications startup called ALIS Networks, also in the Boston, Massachusetts area. And we were interested in using 3G and 4G communication networks to do wireless video phone calls, etc.
Did that happen to start like during the pandemic, or was that prior?
Little prior to the pandemic, a few years prior to the pandemic. In fact, if it had been in the middle of the pandemic, we would have done wonderfully well. But as it
Right.
we did okay, but not it was not a great outcome. It was an okay outcome.
So now here you are at SafeLiShare. So how did you it all three of those are a little bit different, each of those companies. And so now here you are over, with an AI model. How did you evolve into that? And tell us a little bit about what you're doing at SafeLiShare and how you decided to, move into this realm of cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, it's related to what you asked a few minutes earlier about the time between the three different firms or the fourth one. It's all about having an idea. In my case, each one of the companies that I've done has been based on some new sort of idea that you get, and there is no timing that you can place on that. You get an idea when you get an idea. And then once you have an idea and you vet the idea out, you talk to friends, you talk to family, you talk to your colleagues, you talk to people who know, who can give you a lot of guidance, etc. You start talking to potential customers, and you formulate the basics of the idea. You get you get some notions of how you're going to market, how you're going to go to market, what is the product fit, etc. And all of those issues start to become germane. So in this particular case, SafeLiShare was started because I had become interested in data privacy. In grad school, I had been interested in machine learning, and in fact, my thesis topic was machine learning itself. It was not even close to what it is today, but in those days, it was mostly about expert systems and knowledge-based systems and representation of knowledge networks and data networks, etc. Semantics of knowledge networks, etc. So the notion was around data privacy or personal privacy, and that is the basis of SafeLiShare as well, about how do you keep information private, how do you keep information protected, and how do you maintain the privacy and confidentiality of information. So that was I had a set of ideas on that, started to discuss those ideas with some friends of mine. I have two co-founders in the company, and they are also ex-Bell Labs engineers. We ended up, the three of us, talking about a lot of these ideas. And we, after extensive sort of conversations between ourselves and between potential partners and colleagues, etc., we were able to attract some funding and start the company in August of 21. Founded the company in August of 21, and then we attracted a seed round in the first part of 22. So we are about 2 years old almost in some sense. And we're very happy with how we've made progress.
Well, that's awesome. Congratulations on that. How, being someone, I put out events, so every other week or every week I'm seeing, lots of different vendors. What is and lots of new, lots of things have really changed post-pandemic. I feel like a lot of the old staple names that we've been hearing about forever, they're partnering, newer companies are partnering with them. So we're seeing newer names like SafeLiShare at our events. So how is the competition, and is it tough for you because, there's just so many different vendors doing so many different things?
Well, I think I think that it's always good to have a few competitors. It would be very scary for me if I didn't have any competitors at all. It means I'm doing something really crazy, and I would start to question the space in which I was working as to why no one else is interested in that space. So having a few competitors is actually a little soothing and comfortable. It's good. Having a lot of competitors obviously is not good, because then you have many more fights on your hands in some sense.
Right.
Right. So we do have competitors. It's a very hot topic in some sense, and particularly when you bring in machine learning and AI governance, etc., issues and data issues, the field of competitors becomes larger. But there are, I think, the problems are important and varied enough that there is room for a lot of innovation in this space, and we are extremely fortunate to be in this space. I think a lot of good work is being done and needs to be done. I think that it'll have tremendous impact on our society as a whole.
I actually have noticed in 2023, our attendees that are coming to our events, we're really particular, first off, about making sure we get the right attendees at our events. But I am seeing a lot of senior level, security practitioners and, C-level practitioners coming because they are seeing new names and new faces in the industry, and they are trying to get away, from the old names and see what innovations are out there. And then oddly enough, some of Palo Alto, I haven't seen them at an event in years and years. And now I'm seeing, the Palo Altos and the big guys, the CrowdStrikes coming back around thinking, okay, I better get back into these, smaller events. I better not just stay at the huge events, because our name share is kind of, having a run for its money with the smaller companies that are coming in and doing a lot of our events. So it is interesting. But tell us a little bit, like today's topic is AI model and data governance in the cloud and security for all listeners on Voice America. Can you kind of give us a synopsis of what that means and what we're going to talk about with that topic?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I don't think there would be anybody in our audience today who hasn't heard about artificial intelligence and machine learning sort of things that are going on in the world today. These are extremely important, once in a lifetime sort of technologies that have happened. Of course, the field of AI and machine learning is very old. You can say that the foundations of AI and machine learning were built in the 1940s and 50s, even with the work in perceptrons, etc. Then there was a phase in the 1970s and 80s in which there was a spurt of new sort of innovative work that happened. Then it sort of cooled down a little bit towards the 1990s or so, or early 2000s. But then it picked up again, and now, with ChatGPT and these large language models, etc., there's been a tidal wave of a sea change has happened. So these are extremely important technological innovations that are happening in society today, and the tech has never been more sort of exciting and more impactful. From the cars that we drive, from the cybernetic control systems that we use, there is hardly any field that does not impact us, which is not using some form of AI and machine learning, etc. So extremely important. When you couple that with the idea of so one thing that perhaps people don't understand is that AI and machine learning systems, as sort of represented by these foundational models or large language models such as ChatGPT, etc., are essentially based on enormously large amounts of data. These are data-intensive programs, computer programs that use very large amounts of data to ferret out the interrelationships between the data, and it's the extensive set of relationships within the data, inherent in the data that is being extracted by these models and which is used to make these predictions and forecasts and disease analysis and image recognition, etc. That because of the central importance of data in all this exercise, that is in some sense, the foundation of these systems. Cybersecurity issues are even more important now than they were before, because if you're going to base a lot of things on data, then you need to protect the data as well. So all the issues around data security and data privacy become even more meaningful and impactful and crucial and critical and important. So because of the impact of AI and machine learning, we are as a society, we are concerned about the bias that these systems should be free of all kinds of biases. They should not be discriminatory if loan and credit worthiness of people is going to be decided by machine learning systems. We need to ensure that there is a fairness in these systems, that there is a notion of ethics and responsibility exhibited by these systems, that the autonomous cars that we drive are safe and free of problems of data piracy and data privacy, etc. So all of those issues, because of the impactful nature of these systems, become even more important in maintaining the governance structures that surround data privacy and data confidentiality and data security. So this is all extremely important. So there are a bunch of firms, of course, that are building these machine learning systems and building AI systems, etc. But just as crucially, there is an ecosystem that needs to exist that surrounds these AI systems and makes sure that there are notions of fairness and transparency and non-biasness that gets built into these systems as well. Then, of course, that once these systems are deployed, there's a whole series of threat vectors, attack vectors that have started to emerge in the community, and cybersecurity individuals are worried about maintaining the integrity of these systems that are at a faster and faster pace getting deployed in the world around us. So it's all sort of happening at a very fast pace, but it's all about data security, data privacy, data confidentiality, and the removal of bias and introducing notions of fairness and transparency in the AI and machine learning systems that we use going forward.
Where are we? How have we evolved when we talk about in the automobile industry and with AI and these cars? And, I haven't talked about that on the show in a long time, but, before, it's not like I'm seeing cars pass me with no drivers yet. So, where are we with that, and how safe, how is that gonna evolve? And are we ever gonna get to a place where we're gonna feel safe that, I personally wouldn't want to be a passenger in a car that's driving me with no driver?
Yeah, no, I think there's a notion of misunderstanding of the issues. I don't want to forecast how long it will take for self-driving cars to happen in a meaningful way. I mean, you can now go from point A to point B in some cases, but it's still a rarity. But the use of smart technologies in cars is sort of increasing. I'll give you a simple example. I back out of my driveway whenever I leave my house, and I live on a rather busy street, and there's always the possibility that some oncoming traffic will be as I back out of my driveway, because I'm too lazy to drive with facing front, so I sort of back out in the driveway, and I use the rear view facing camera, which has a oncoming traffic sensor. And I noticed the other day that I had become so in a subconscious manner, I had become so dependent on hearing a beep of the oncoming traffic that I hardly ever look in the rear view mirror anymore. I sort of depend on the car as I'm backing out to detect if there is any oncoming traffic before I reverse into the car and go my way. So this is not self-driving. It is becoming dependent on a safety system being provided by the car technology, and that safety system is using machine recognition technology or image recognition technology. So I am not a proponent. Today I would certainly not. I think like you, I would not like to be in a self-driving car, but I am absolutely sure that I want to have smart security systems in my car that help me with pre-collision detection or oncoming traffic detection or lane assist, in which the car is kept in the lane as I perhaps am not being as careful in keeping the car between the two traffic lines on the road, etc. So we start to depend on these smart security systems in cars, almost at a subconscious level. We start taking them for granted. I mean, I was listening to my son the other day, who has just learned to drive, and he said, "Dad, let's make sure that the new," and he's using an older car which doesn't have a lot of security features. And he said to me, "Dad, let's make sure that we get a car next time that has a lot of security features. I've started to use them myself." So that was quite welcome to hear from him. That's where I think the action is going to be. We become dependent on these smart systems to help us navigate traffic in smart cars. Whether we get to the point of a traffic infrastructure that allows widespread use of self-driving cars, in which we sit in the back seat and the car drives itself, I'm not sure that is an interesting discussion to have at this time. The sort of interesting discussion to have at this time is, are we starting to depend on the safety features being provided by the car? We now have
I agree with you.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
smartphones integrated into our cars. Some of the more recent new cars, if you are a passenger on the front seat, you have your own display technology now available to you on the passenger side, and you can look at videos, and you can start doing YouTube and sort of other things. And is that going to be distractions? So can the car help? Can the car look at you as you drive and notice that you are doing distracted driving?
Well, and it's interesting that you talk about like your younger son, because my youngest, when she was 16, well, she's the youngest of three, but she didn't really start driving until she was 17. But I bought her an older car, like some Jeep that not like a Jeep, like a,
Sure.
that for, and it had no, I had a friend that owned a warehouse that they sold cars. So I wanted to go someplace to just get something for cash, knowing I've had two other drivers, that I'm not buying anything expensive because there's going to be something's going to happen. And yeah, but so I do feel like, and it did, she ended up like probably within about a month of having the car, she had an accident in my driveway and hit my retaining wall to my backyard, which was not I was really upset, but really in hindsight, I'm glad it happened. If she was going to have an accident, glad it happened on my property, not on the highway. But it has made her a better driver because she's had to become aware. Now, if she would have had a security feature, she would have never hit my retaining wall, and it wouldn't have cost me thousands and thousands of dollars to fix the retaining wall. But I do feel like it has made her a better driveway, and a better driver. And we have a really narrow driveway, and our two other cars, the security, it'll stop us if we're going to hit, like we're backed up. It's just a really narrow driveway. So you could hit a wall, it'll stop us. But she doesn't have any security on hers, and she has no idea what it even feels like to drive a car with security on
Exactly.
it. So I feel like it's good for the younger ones to start like we did, so you can become a more defensive driver. But then it is also good to have that safety feature on your child, your young one that you're putting on the road. So I feel like there's pros and cons on
Yeah.
both ways
Yeah. No,
of the security features.
when I came to your FutureCon event in Washington D.C., I drove from New Jersey to D.C. because it was the most efficient use of my time. It turned out that I had a bunch of other sort of tasks to do, so driving to your event was the easiest. And I noticed that my smart car uh, uh, sort of advised me a couple of times uh, that I should take a rest and have a cup of coffee because of the way I was
Hmm.
driving. Uh, uh, the car detected that perhaps I was not fully sort of attentive. Now, I don't know the metrics it used to do that. I can take a guess. Maybe my hands were not in the right position on the steering wheel, or maybe they were off the steering wheel. But but I actually listened to this advice, and I did turn into a rest stop and took a few minutes off. And these sort of things are meaningful and secure. So I think that my point is that number one, these are very important things that we start to use in our daily lives, and we become more and more dependent on them. And the third point I want to make is that, therefore, the data that goes into making these kinds of decision-making systems are part of our daily routine and our daily lives. We have to ensure that the data going into these systems is secure and hasn't been poisoned, um, and there are no malicious parties that have been able to inject erroneous or dangerous data into these machine learning systems that form the basis of these safety features in cars.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit, no pun intended there. What, how is AI used in the cloud? How
So,
do we wrap our head around that? That I think that's a really interesting question.
well, there are all kinds of uses from the playful use that a lot of non-technical people do. I mean, I have some friends, and and one of them just had a grandchild, and he told me that he had asked uh, a certain AI system to compose a poem for his grandchild. In and with certain specific features and characteristics. So that's a playful use, fun use, uh, from to slightly more serious, where students are using it to craft essays and uh, get help with their searches and doing background research, etc. So those are this, and to now, of course, more sort of to more technical uses. A lot of large language models and transformer models, etc., are coming with are coming with APIs and various kinds of interfaces, and they are becoming a, and they are being integrated into the technology stacks, into the tech stacks of various companies. It is now possible to take what is almost freely, in some cases freely available. It's in the open source community, or even not sort of very sort of expensive if you plan to pay for it. Um, to use what is available in the marketplace today, and craft new AI systems that would have taken months to build, reduce the building time to weeks and days. And these are very interesting small systems that emerge from tech stacks in which sort of integrated around the idea of these new models, which are becoming generally available. So all kinds of usages, from the playful to educational to technical, and the results are for all to see and use. Right? We now start to see the use of text generation systems, making big use of large language models. We're doing a lot of writing, etc., using help from these large language models. We're using image recognition systems in a variety of ways. Our public infrastructure is now being defended and made secure using a lot of threat detection, intrusion detection, etc. So a very large variety of uses are coming to the fore.
So what kind of data governance are we seeing, like in the cloud, particularly duplicated data? And the reason I asked that is I was seeing this morning Brian Krebs. I'm sure you might know who Brian Krebs is. And maybe you don't, but he's a big influencer in the cybersecurity community, and I try to read his stuff. And he was showing something that I probably would have been fooled by, and I want to copy it and send it to my team. But when we get an email that may look like a phishing attack, we go straight to look at the URL. Now, he showed 2 URLs, and now they're slightly changing the letter of an A, like maybe in bank. And he compared the two, you just say US Bank, he compared usbank.com and usbank.com, and that A was slightly off a little bit, and that was the phishing one. So what are we seeing more of, tricky, more duplicated, and how do we stay ahead of that? And what else are you seeing in the cloud like that?
You're asking a very important question, and a very sort of insightful question. These kinds of attacks are called evasion attacks. These are very carefully crafted input data sets that are intended to fool the machine learning system during its training phase or during its retraining phase. You can slightly alter certain letters or signs and fool the model into thinking something very different. So, for example, there are known examples known in the literature of where evasion attacks were able to fool a system in a smart car system from misunderstanding a stop sign to a speed limit sign. And imagine if this happened in a real, you would not like to be in a car that did not, that you were somehow depending on seeing a stop sign and it completely misunderstood the stop sign and took it for a speed limit sign, etc. So these are the kinds of attacks that happen. And it underscores the point I was trying to make earlier. As these systems become more and more of a part of our daily lives, and we start to depend on them, whether we like it or not, we will start to depend on these features. It'll become very, very important that we somehow figure out how malicious attacks, such as evasion attacks, get taken care of. And there's no known trick. I mean, I wish I could tell you that there is a technology available today, or I have an invention or a patent on some technology that would stop evasion attacks. Nobody does. It's the old way in which you used to get a radar detector to stop getting speeding tickets. But of course, the cops had better radar detectors than you do. So it's a never-ending race. Evasion attacks will continue to happen. We need to monitor. We need to understand how to counter these threats. But a fail-safe approach isn't possible. And it's only one type of attack. Evasion attacks are only one type of attack. There are many other forms of attacks that are coming to the fore. As this technology grows, newer and newer forms of attacks will come on. I can mention a few more. So, for example, there are data poisoning attacks that are starting to being detected, in which the input data to a machine learning system, and I already highlighted for you that the input data is of crucial importance to the machine learning process itself. So if you can poison, if you can add malicious or wrong or erroneous data to your input data sets, you will impact the learnability of the function, or the machine learning function. So, and those attacks are called data poisoning attacks, and those attacks are on the rise. There are attacks in which you carefully craft a series of questions that you ask of the system, and then you look at the responses of the system to figure out whether a certain kind of private or confidential information was used in the training of that machine learning system. You might recall a few years ago, there was a TV show called 20 Questions, in which you were allowed, members of the audience were allowed to ask up to 20 questions whose answers were yes or no. And from that, you were asked to figure out the identity of a person. And in a similar fashion, if you have a question answering machine learning system, if you are allowed to ask a series of questions, in some cases you can figure out private confidential information of somebody that the system might know, and you would not expect for the system to blurt out that kind of information. But you can extract it by very carefully reasoned set of questions and answers. So those kinds of attacks are there. Powerful systems have powerful consequences, and the phishing attacks were a very powerful way. When the technology was not so powerful, it was only in terms of a simple email system. But now we are going to have much more powerful systems, and the attacks that we're going to see are going to be much more powerful and much more impactful. I'm sorry to say, but that is what it's going to be.
So what are we seeing now? You know, we know a lot of these attacks come from nation state bad actors, or but what about the scams that are happening here in the United States? Are we seeing any consequences of these people getting caught on until there's a price to pay? Talking about nation state is a whole different way out of my realm, because that's federal stuff, that whatever's happening at the White House. But what are with the Secret Service and all that, but what's happening in the United States to these criminals that are here, like we've seen some on reality TV. There was somebody that went to jail because she was scamming all these older people with different types of false promises, but they were really essentially phishing attacks. So are we seeing the law coming down on these attackers? We don't really hear about that stuff on the news. I mean, it would only be people like you that probably know about it, but it's not common, local, interesting news stories.
No, so first, a little preamble. Somebody sent me in an email message a few days ago a conversation between a certain famous person and ChatGPT. And I could not tell whether this was a joke or whether this conversation had actually taken place between this rather famous person and this machine learning system. And I am supposed to be an expert. I mean, I am not a common person on the street. a member of the laity, I've had several years of exposure to this technology. So I couldn't tell whether the conversation actually happened or it was a contrived thing. Very sophisticated bits of conversations are being done. If you look at a conversation between, let's say, for instance, ChatGPT-4 and yourself or something, it may have certain errors, and some people are very fond of pointing out that, look, ChatGPT made a mistake here or did a mistake there or something like that. But actually, the much more dangerous thing is that the mistakes that these machine learning systems make are very subtle now. They're becoming harder to detect. Obvious mistakes don't scare me, but subtle mistakes, if it's going to take an expert to figure out that something that the system is trying to tell you or tells you actually is wrong, that's a very scary thing, that you can no longer make a distinction between what is right and what is wrong. In this conversation that somebody sent me, there was a mathematical argument that had been made, and the answer that the machine learning system gave was wrong, but it was given in such a plausible manner that unless you were a mathematician, you would assume it to be right. So that's one thing. Normally when some new technology happens, most of the people get wrapped up in advancing the power and sophistication of that technology. This happened, for instance, and this is a terrible example, but it's the first one that comes to mind, is that when the nuclear technology was first invented in the Second World War, it was followed by a phase in which people figured out more and more powerful weapons and bombs, etc., with more capacity and power. It was much later that the security features were sort of became of much more concern. Quite fortunately, this time around, a number of people have started to raise the alarms about the dangers of these machine learning and AI systems, including President Biden, who I think has taken an initiative in a couple of ways, quite well known, in which the White House has publicly announced support for cybersecurity features and for taking machine learning, making it safer and more responsible and ethical, and guarding civil liberties and civil rights, etc. So there is a lot more needs to be done, but I think that there is an encouraging amount of concern amongst the technical community, the technological community, as well as the workers themselves. Several well-known technologists have publicly announced their concern for safety and security of these systems. So I am very hopeful that we as a society will become much more receptive in how we use and how we develop and how we deploy these systems in the future.
Well, ChatGPT was only launched in November of 2022, and it's only June. And look at everything, how quickly it's evolved in the 7, 8 months it's been around. So what are your fears, of the future? I mean, I like it. I play with it because I'm not doing it dangerously. I use it, to help my speeches at my events and, give me some new content. I like it that way. But that's the fun way, as you were saying before. But I know that, a lot of the CEOs, got together, Apple, Microsoft, they were on one news station. And I think Elon Musk said, we need to slow it down. I'm like, well, it's too late. I don't think it's slowing down. So what do you think that we're going to see any sort of regulations or governance on it? Or what do you think is the future of ChatGPT?
I don't know what is the future of ChatGPT, despite the congressional hearings, etc. But I can speculate. But first, this morning, just today, I was standing in line at my local grocery store, trying to buy a sandwich, and there was a woman next to me. She and the person working at the deli counter obviously knew her from as a repeat customer, and he asked her, how was your vacation? And she said, oh, it was wonderful. My daughter had a good time. She's so knowledgeable about AI. She was playing with ChatGPT all the way. And this was, I have never seen this kind of interest and this kind of familiarity where normal everyday conversations are now talking about AI systems that, as you said, were just deployed or were just introduced a few months ago. As to your question, I don't think regulations are going to help. In fact, it might have the reverse effect, where the only people that will get stopped are the legitimate users. Regulations don't stop the bad guys or the malicious people or the bad actors. I think that we need to raise the consciousness level of society as a whole, and enough research and development effort should go into the marriage of security and security technologies and AI technologies. So there are a number of people who are, of course, interested in improving the state of the art as far as machine learning and AI goes. But I think there should be more interest also in AI and data governance, machine learning operations, security considerations, etc., data governance considerations, etc. So I think that if we can improve the awareness of the community as a whole to the security features surrounding machine learning and AI, then that would they would go hand in glove with the development. I think that it is inescapable that machine learning and AI will continue to grow, perhaps not at the pace at which it has been growing in the last couple of years. It has to slow down a little bit, otherwise it'll it's sort of scary fast at the moment. But
Well, and it's scary also are all the fakes that are out there duplicating that they are
yeah,
Chat GPT.
exactly.
And there's you go on your apps and put Chat GPT, and there's thousands. I don't know the real number, but I know there's just so many options for you. And who are they, and are they real? They're not open AI. They're just, are they fake? Are they doing, what's going to happen there?
Somebody sends you a photograph today. How do you know it's real?
Right.
Very simple. I mean, take the billions of photos that people share today, and how many are deep fakes? It's crazy. Yeah. So when was the last time you had some open source stuff that you could not sign on to because there was so much traffic at the website that you can't get in?
Right.
These kinds of things happen. I don't think regulations will. In my opinion, regulations will make matters worse. I am not a proponent of regulations. I am a proponent of more knowledgeable approach to all the other issues, not just the development of AI and machine learning systems, but to the development of the surrounding issues of the ethos in some sense of the security and privacy and data governance, etc. That are just as crucial, perhaps even more crucial.
Well, we are down to about a minute and a half left. Shamim, can you tell our listeners, how they can find you if they have more questions? What's the best way to reach out to you?
Shamim at SafeLiShare.com, SafeLiShare.com, works all the time. please drop me a line. Good old-fashioned email. The SafeLiShare.com has a website, and you can reach us through the website as well. And I want to thank you, Kim, for being such a gracious host and for asking insightful questions. It's very nice to be with you again, and I look forward to seeing you at some of your future con events.
Well, Shamim Naqvi, CEO of SafeLiShare, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. And we definitely would love to have you back on the show. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of And Security for All. I hope you all have a fabulous weekend. Stay safe and stay secure, and we'll see you next week.